الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is episode number 28. In this episode, we're gonna tackle some new idea, which I call it transaction map theory, TMT. This theory to allocate or identify the usury in any transaction. The theory has 4 parts. To help understanding, those 4 parts are the definition, assumption, technique, application. It's not complicated, it's simple. Definition is the first part. It is an instrument, intellectual instrument. The theory in general, it's sort of explaining phenomenon, used a lot in physical science. You can use it in social science. Maybe I had the courage to use it in Islamic Economics or in economic in general to tackle one of the complicated problem. Not because it is complicated, no, because it's a circumstance make it now. We said the linguistic distortion, the international monetary system, all these things has made usury problematic. Maybe any other faith, they can live with it, with usury system. But in Islam, you can't, because it's contradict with the concept of money, contradict with the zakah system. And we have a text very clear that in addition to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the text said it very clearly, أَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَ. As I mentioned before, that will apply to every Muslim as a minimum knowledge to be able to distinguish between what is bay', which I translate it as trade, which is halal, and what is riba. Then I was thinking too deeply how to make that easy, how to make it available to everyone with this jungle of transaction to find out what is usury and what is not, and why. Within the definition of transaction map theory, it gives you that thing to allocate the usury within any transaction. Then you get a transaction. If you follow the theory, you will be able to tell that transaction is either usury or not, or trade. It's as simple as that. Listen within the definition. Then now we understand we've got a theory. It may be first time in Islamic economics or in economic in general to deal with usury in a such theory to investigate or to allocate the usury. And that could be available to everybody. Once you understand it, you follow the step by step, you get whatever transaction in front of you, you can find out if it is usury or not and why. Then this is a definition. After the definition, now we understand what is the transaction map theory to allocate usually about. Then, second, assumption. In the assumption, in order to apply the theory, you need an environment which has a circumstance which is make the theory applicable. Then you can apply the theory in different environment. And that assumption create that environment. It's very common in every theory. In transaction TMT, which I call it for short, assumption, there is about 8 assumptions. It's not restricted to 8 assumptions. You can add to it, you can reduce it, you can put two together in one. It's up to the intellectual of the reader, of the user. Maybe somebody tried to modify the theory. It's up to you. The main thing is to understand it and to be able to apply it to any transaction and allocate or identify the usury element of the transaction and to understand the transaction and say why it is usury. That's the main thing. Then I will just go through quickly the assumption, and you can go there in the book. This is not very complicated, it's simple, but for the time used appropriate, I'll just go through it quickly. The first assumption called endowment status. What is endowment status? Then everybody, as assumption, should have, because you're going to see later on the technique, have a minimum of goods and a minimum of money. You need these two elements in order to be enter in the market for the transaction of TMT. The second assumption, the need of exchange. You go in the market, you need to exchange. You got goods and you got money. And other people in the market, they got either goods or money, and you have, both of you need to exchange, buy or sell. Third assumption is rationality. And you have to be rationality against irrational. I'm not going to say another word. And they have to be in balance to take good decision motivated by positive outcome. You know, really go to make a silly transaction. Number 4, in the market has to be free competition. It's actually is very important condition for any market to function. Number 5 assumption is very important. Money has to be real and goods has to be real. Then would say the assumption number 5, real money and real good. You would say, according even to what I explained in the concept, the Islamic concept of money, money today is not real. I agree completely. Money is not real. Good must be real. You can't sell virtual goods unless you sell a product. But because money is not real, but it has a money function, you can still able to apply the TMT. Then, although this is an assumption to make the theory perfect, but if that assumption is not there, you can still apply the transaction, the TMT. One other thing is important, which every human activity rely on, ethical failures, free of ethical failure and free of moral hazard. Of course, as a human being, we are obliged to have some ethical and moral. Then here is assumption you're free from ethical failure and moral hazard. You assume as well, assumption number 7, الغن must be equal to الغرم. Gain should be equal by loss. If you exchange, for example, apple by orange, the quantity you have to suggest that what you lose when you give up orange nearly equal to what you gain if you get an apple. That will the rule. And all this has a Sharia principle. The last one, which is number 8, forbidden deception, al-gharar. Al-gharar means you're selling something which is not specified or clearly defined, like you're selling a fish in the sea or a camel which is lost in the desert. This deception does not consider as a legal transaction. These assumptions build up a market or a rule of the market which we're going to apply the transaction. Somebody may feel you can add some or put 2 in 1 or say one is not important. It's up to you. But the main thing is to understand the theory in total. As we finished the definition, we finished the assumption. Now the technique. Technique is very important. It's very simple. You will be surprised how simple it is. Things in general divided by either money or goods. This is the principle which the theory has built on, that things is being divided either goods or by either goods or money. And in the money section, we explain that the intrinsic value for money is an exchange value. And the intrinsic value for goods is the use value. It's completely different. In the Arabic language, we call it الثمن والمثمن. But for linguistic easy, for the language today, we call it money and goods. Then you divide everything between either goods or money. There is nothing else. Everything you pick up a cup, that's a good. Pick up a pound, that's money. Anything you have to decide. This is either good or money. This is make it easy now, because once you reach that clear in your mind, and you can be able to identify any item, either good or money, then probabilities, you go only 3 choice or 3 transaction exclusively, which is money for money, goods for goods, or money for goods. All these transactions in the world, if you go to the city or you go in anywhere where they do, there is a market when they do sell and buy, you have to see clearly what they sell, what they buy. And you have to be able to identify what is money and what is good. Once you reach that stage, you look at the transaction, see in which category. Is it money for money, or goods for goods, or money for goods? Once you reach that stage, then you have to see or to decide what is the aim of the transaction. Once you decide the aim of the transaction, and this is very important because we are human, we don't transact for the sake of the transaction. We transact for a purpose, for an aim. You want to achieve something by this transaction. Then, after you divide the things, you look at the transaction to see what is good and what is money. And when you reach that stage, you have to see clearly what is the aim of the transaction. That's number 3. Number 4 of the technique is to find out. Now, which is clever, but you need some information in this. What is the Sharia condition to achieve that aim? You will see in the application very clearly, but you have to understand intellectually the steps or the technicality of TMT. First, you divide everything in the world to either money or goods. Secondly, to see the transaction subject for investigation. What is the goods and what is the money? And what is the aim of the transaction? Once you see or decide the aim of the transaction, you will look and find the Sharia condition or the Islamic rule in that transaction to guarantee you, to allow you to achieve the aim of that transaction. And that will help you to understand transaction in general, help you why we transact and how we achieve the aim of the transaction, not only to achieve, to guarantee the achievement of the transaction. In the application, we take every category of those, money for money, goods for goods, money for goods, and apply the theory, and we'll see how it works by deciding the aim and find out the Islamic rule and see how that Islamic rule guarantee the achievement of the aim of the transaction without any side effect or any externalities, without contradiction with any other rules. And this is very important. Then when we say you achieve the aim, guarantee achieving the aim, that aim condition you don't create side effects or externalities, and you do not contradict with any other Sharia law within the area of transaction or within the Islamic Sharia in total. We explain the three, the definition, the assumption, the technicality, and next episode will explain some of the application to explain more and find out more how to allocate the usury from the transaction. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.